17 years of marriage. It was a life I thought was solid, built on trust, understanding, and shared goals. I helped raise two stepdaughters, now grown and thriving, and while we didn't have children of our own, we had a strong bond, or so I believed. My wife and I always communicated openly, whether about life, work, or even intimacy. We stayed active, lived healthily, and supported each other's careers. She worked from home in legal consultancy, while I worked grueling hours in the medical field, often pulling overtime. Despite this, we always found time to reconnect, grounding our marriage in mutual respect and love. That's why the discovery of her affair blindsided me. It happened when I updated the app on the Dyson fan in our bedroom, a mundane task I'd done countless times. Her phone was closer, and I asked to use it. As I navigated through her apps, a Snapchat notification popped up. It read, "I'll bring the special toy." Those 6 words detonated my entire world. My mind froze, my body went cold. She noticed my reaction and asked if something was wrong. I forced myself to recover, mumbling an excuse about the fan's router settings, and returned her phone. She had no idea her message had just unraveled everything I thought I knew about us. That night, I sat in stunned silence, replaying the moment over and over. My wife's quarterly business trip was coming up in a few days, one she regularly took 2 states away for 5 days. Now, I questioned everything about it. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with the implications. The woman I had shared my life with for nearly 2 decades had betrayed me, and I had only scratched the surface of the truth. The next morning, while she went to the office, I began digging. She had logged into Facebook on our shared Chromebook the day before, and from there, I uncovered more than I ever wanted to see. Her messaging app history revealed over 15,000 texts dating back 18 months. Flirty messages, explicit photos, and memes they'd exchanged were all there. Around 3 months ago, they stopped using the app for their communication, likely switching to Snapchat for more secrecy. He was younger, married, with 3 young children. I recognized him, a colleague she had introduced me to at a company event. I had shaken his hand. The betrayal became even more personal as I stared at messages where they shared intimate details about their lives, her complaints about me, and worst of all, her declarations of love to him. I reached a breaking point when I discovered the special toy from her Snapchat message, an expensive app-controlled vibrator tucked neatly into her carry-on luggage. She had planned to take it on her trip. I stood in our bedroom, holding it in my hands, trying to fathom how someone I trusted so completely could desecrate our marriage so thoroughly. My instincts shifted to survival. I needed a plan. I called a trusted friend, who recommended a lawyer known for her ruthless expertise. I booked an emergency consultation and printed out every incriminating piece of evidence. Texts, photos, everything. It cost me over $500 to print the file, but I wanted the images to speak for themselves when the time came. When my wife returned home that evening, I played along like nothing was amiss. It was agonizing, but I knew I needed more time to act decisively. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I spent the weekend gathering every possible detail about her affair, watching her go about her day as if nothing was wrong. I hated how normal she seemed, how easily she moved through our shared space while hiding this double life. On Monday, I made my move. I took time off work, something I rarely did, and met with the lawyer. She listened intently as I laid out the situation. Her advice was clear and practical. Avoid any dramatic confrontations or impulsive actions that could jeopardize my case. She outlined a path forward that focused on protecting my interests and ensuring I had control of the situation. When my wife left for her trip, I made my final preparations. I logged into the hotel's system using her booking details and added myself as an authorized guest. I planned to confront her at the hotel, armed with the evidence. I imagined the moment over and over, her shock, her excuses, her lies unraveling before her eyes. But my lawyer's words weighed on me. Confrontation would be satisfying in the short term, but it wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I decided to send the evidence to the other betrayed spouse, her affair partner's wife. She deserved to know. I included a message explaining everything and attached the files. I hesitated only briefly before hitting send. The fallout began almost immediately. My wife returned home earlier than planned, visibly shaken. Her partner's wife had confronted him, and he, in turn, must have contacted her. She tried to downplay everything, pleading with me to let her explain, but I was done listening. I laid the evidence on the table, 3 thick folders of texts, photos, and screenshots. I asked her one question. Why? She had no answer. Her tears and apologies were hollow, and every word she spoke only deepened the void between us. She begged for a chance to fix things, to rebuild, but I couldn't see a path forward. The person I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had destroyed everything we built together for a fleeting thrill. Her sobs filled the house, but I felt nothing but rage and contempt. For 17 years, I had sacrificed for this marriage. I gave up medical school, embraced a life I once vowed against, and built a home, not just a house, but a life, tailored to us. And for what? A year and a half of lies, betrayal, and disrespect. She had traded our life for fleeting pleasure. The next few days were a whirlwind of action and emotion. I notified close family and friends about her affair, ensuring the truth was out in the open. Her attempts to rationalize her betrayal only fueled my anger. She claimed it was an adventure, something that gave her a rush, and that she never thought about the damage it might cause until it was too late. Her words were like acid, burning, hollow, and devoid of accountability. I sent friend requests to her affair partner's wife and others who deserved to know the truth. I ensured every piece of evidence was secure, recorded, and accessible. Then I called her company's compliance line. I detailed how she and her affair partner had violated data security protocols by sharing sensitive client information on unsecured platforms. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about accountability. If she had no respect for our marriage, at least there would be consequences in her professional life. She cried harder when her employer called for an HR meeting. She was terminated shortly after, along with her affair partner. When she told me, I barely reacted. I simply said, "Good." She tried to spin it as a mutual loss, as though we were both victims of the fallout. But I wasn't a victim of the fallout. I was a victim of her choices. Despite my lawyer's advice, I let my emotions get the better of me one night. She climbed into bed after I had told her to stay in the guest room. She started pleading, whispering apologies and promises, even offering to let me have an open marriage as penance. I laughed bitterly. "You think I want someone else? I wanted you, but you threw me away." I didn't trust her, and I didn't want to. But I let her stay that night, anger and something darker boiling beneath the surface. I didn't touch her gently or with love. I was rough, cold, and detached. It wasn't about intimacy, it was about taking control. When it was over, I felt no satisfaction, just shame and confusion. The next morning, I confronted her with a question my therapist had suggested. "What inside you gave you permission to do this to me?" Her answer was as empty as I expected. She admitted it was the thrill, the adrenaline. She didn't think it would matter. She thought she could have both lives without consequence. I told her there was no redemption for what she did. Not for me, not for us. I met with her daughters, the girls I had helped raise for over a decade. They were adults now, 28 and 23, but this news crushed them. I told them everything, not to turn them against their mother, but because they deserved to know the truth. I told them I didn't expect them to pick sides, and that I hoped they would maintain a relationship with my parents, who adored them. Their disappointment in their mother was evident, though they tried to hide it. In the days that followed, I began disentangling my life from hers. I packed my belongings, resigned from my job, and started planning to leave the city. Staying here, surrounded by memories of her betrayal, wasn't an option. I couldn't bear the thought of running into her or living in a house I had built for us, knowing she had desecrated it with lies. One evening, as I packed the last of my belongings, she sat on the couch, flipping through old photos of us. She asked again what she could do to make things right. I told her the truth. Nothing. You killed what we had, and I'll never love you again. Her tears fell silently as she realized the finality of my words. By the end of that week, I had finalized my plans to leave. My lawyer assured me that moving away wouldn't harm the divorce proceedings or the division of assets. With my resignation submitted, I decided to spend my remaining weeks focusing on rebuilding myself, something that seemed impossible in the house I had shared with her. Every corner of it carried the weight of her betrayal. I packed up the last of my things while she watched, her face a mask of regret and despair. She made one final plea, saying she would do anything to fix things, that she had realized too late how much she loved me. But I couldn't see her as the woman I once loved. I couldn't forgive the deliberate choices she made, the texts, the secret meetings, the lies whispered while lying next to me. As I walked out the door for the last time, I left her with a single message. I hope you find whatever it was worth losing me for. I didn't wait for a response. In the weeks that followed, I started therapy, trying to piece together the person I used to be. I stopped drinking, forced myself to eat again, and began reaching out to friends and family for support. The bitterness and anger didn't disappear overnight, but step by step, I began to reclaim my life. The divorce paperwork moved forward, and I kept my distance from her. Occasionally, she would try to reach out, short, desperate messages, asking if I could ever find it in my heart to forgive her. I ignored them. Forgiveness wasn't something I could offer, not to her. Leaving the city felt like shedding old skin. The memories of my life with her stayed behind, locked in the past where they belonged. Starting over wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't heal while clinging to the wreckage of what was. For anyone going through something similar, let me say this. No matter how deeply you're hurt, your life doesn't end here. The pain will feel unbearable, but you are not defined by the betrayal. Seek support, confront the grief, and focus on rebuilding. It's a slow process, but there's a future beyond the pain. If you've made it this far, thank you for reading. If my story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel for more stories and advice. Let's navigate this mess of life together.